It started in a quiet town in Maine, the kind of place where people never lock their doors. But on one summer night in 2010, 3 lives were taken in a way so brutal, so senseless, that it left an entire community paralyzed with fear. When firefighters arrived at the edge of Amity, they didn't expect to find a burning truck. Inside a nearby house, they found something worse. 3 bodies, a father, his 10-year-old son, and a family friend, all stabbed to death. The killer, a polite 20-year-old who looked like any other kid in town. His name, Thayne Ormsby. He claimed he killed because he believed Jeffrey Ryan, the father, was a dangerous drug dealer. But there was no proof, no evidence, just a rumor, a whisper. And from that whisper came a massacre. Ormsby didn't run far. Police found him hiding across the state line in New Hampshire, calm and motionless, as if nothing had happened. When they asked why he murdered a child, his answer was cold. He saw me. I couldn't let him live. At the trial, the jury stared at him in disbelief. There was no rage in his face, no guilt, no remorse, only emptiness. And when the verdict came, 3 life sentences without parole, he just nodded. What drives a young man to slaughter a family over a lie? What makes a mind believe killing is justice? This is not just another murder story. This is the story of how paranoia, pride, and pure delusion turned a small-town boy into a monster. Stay till the end because his confession will chill you to your core. Classification: murderer. Characteristics: Ormsby told police he killed Jeffrey Ryan because he believed Ryan was a drug dealer. Number of victims: 3. Date of murders: June 22, 2010. Date of arrest: July 2, 2010. Date of birth: 1990. Victims profile: Jeffrey Ryan, 55. Ryan's son Jesse, 10. And Ryan family friend Jason DeHaan, 30. Method of murder: stabbing with a combat-style knife. Location: Amity. Aroostook County, Maine, USA. Status: sentenced to 3 life terms in prison without parole on June 7, 2012. Ormsby sentenced to 3 life terms for Amity triple slayings. June 7, 2012. Houlton, Maine, appearing aloof as the victims' families expressed their anguish earlier in the day. The 22-year-old who killed 3 people in a rural home in Amity in June 2010 was sentenced Thursday afternoon to 3 life terms, 1 for each murder. Since parole in Maine was abolished in 1976, Thayne Ormsby will spend the rest of his life in prison. Ormsby showed no visible emotion as he stood before Aroostook County Superior Court Justice E. Allen Hunter while the sentence was being handed down. Hunter also presided over the trial. While acknowledging that Ormsby had been denied social justice and that he was subjected to physical abuse and deprivation in his childhood, Hunter said that those circumstances were not enough to mitigate the severity of killing 3 people. Ormsby was convicted on April 13th in the stabbing deaths of Jeffrey Ryan, 55, Ryan's son Jesse, 10, and Ryan family friend Jason DeHaan, 30, all of Amity, on June 20, 2010. They were found dead about 27 hours after the killings at the elder Ryan's home on U.S. Route 1, according to police. All 3 died of multiple stab wounds. Ormsby, an Ellsworth native who moved to Orient, a town just a mile from the crime scene, entered pleas of not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges. Because of the dual pleas, Ormsby was tried in 2 phases. He was represented by attorneys James Dunleavy and Sarah LeClaire of Presque Isle, and found guilty of the murders first on April 13th and then criminally responsible for his crimes on April 19th. Ormsby also was found guilty of arson for burning Jeff Ryan's truck after he stole it from the murder scene. Ormsby also was sentenced Thursday to 15 years in prison for burning the truck. That sentence will be served consecutively with the life sentences. If he makes any money in prison, Ormsby also was ordered to pay for the funeral expenses of the victims and to pay money into the Victims' Compensation Fund. Ormsby moved to Orient in the weeks before the murders to live with Robert and Joy Strout. Court testimony revealed there was animosity between the Strout family and Jeff Ryan, because Ryan had once had a relationship with Tamara Strout, Robert and Joy's daughter. Tamara Strout eventually had a child with Ryan. Strout also told Ormsby that Ryan was a drug dealer, which there is no evidence to support. During the hearing, Deputy Attorney General Bill Stokes requested that Ormsby be sentenced to life in prison for the slayings and 30 years on the arson charges. This was such a waste of human life, he told the judge. A 10-year-old child butchered with two adults who were minding their own business. We can only imagine the horror that Jesse Ryan felt as he ran to that back bedroom in a futile attempt to hide. The defendant decided he wanted to kill someone, and he set out on that path and didn't want to stop. Dunleavy and Leclerc requested that Ormsby have a chance to get out of prison one day, but they did not ask that a specific length of time be served. Family members of the victims, however, pushed for as much as they could get. Robert DeHaan, Jason's father, said that it felt like a knife had been driven through his own heart when a son he loved deeply was killed. He said that if given a choice, he would want to see Ormsby put to death, but he said Ormsby would one day get what he deserved. May God not have mercy on his soul, he said. Jason's 12-year-old daughter, Skylar DeHaan, also spoke after her mother, Bridget Ireland, talked about how her daughter still has nightmares about her father's death and can't sleep without a light on. She also said she had to watch as Skylar cried on the night of the father-daughter dance at her school because she no longer had a father to take her. Skylar DeHaan spoke through tears about how much she loved and missed her father and said she dreads the end of the week. I cry because that means the weekend is coming, and I always spent the weekends with my father, she told Hunter. Marie Vincent. Jesse Ryan's aunt talked about how much his family and friends miss him. She read aloud a letter the 10-year-old wrote in school just 4 months before the murders, calling his father his best friend. Ormsby raised his eyebrows and seemed taken aback when the family members spoke. He cried for a few moments, however, when his mother Maria Ormsby talked about how happy she was when he remembered to send a note to wish her a happy Mother's Day. His grandmother Janice Wilbur said that he was a good kid growing up and that she was proud he recently received his high school diploma while incarcerated on the murder charges. His uncle Stephen Ormsby joined all three in asking the judge not to sentence him to life in prison. We still have hope for him, said his grandmother. Hunter didn't agree. After Ormsby said that he did not wish to speak in court, Hunter said that the killer had gone to the Ryan home that night with the intent to kill Jeff Ryan, and that when he saw 2 other people there, he didn't abort his plan, he simply expanded it. He added that he had no doubt that all 3 victims experienced conscious pain and suffering before their deaths. He also took into account Jesse Ryan's age and the fact that Ormsby had showed no remorse for his crimes. He noted that he had done research and found that only one person in Maine had killed more people in the state, convicted murderer, Christian Nielsen, who murdered 4 people in Newry in 2006. Mr. Ormsby is tied for second place in the annals of mass murder in Maine, he added grimly. Hunter said he did take into account testimony from Dr. John Lawrence, a psychologist for the defense, who said that Ormsby was subjected to physical abuse and neglect as a child, and that he did not receive needed counseling when he was removed from his mother's custody as a 12-year-old. At the time, Lawrence said he had deep-rooted problems and was deeply disturbed. Lawrence also said Ormsby was psychologically immature at the time of the murders, even though he was 20 years old. But I must hold him accountable, Hunter said. Stokes said after the sentencing that he was happy Ormsby was given life in prison, but said there were no winners in the case, as the victims' families will feel their losses for the rest of their lives. He credited Ormsby's attorneys for their work and also praised Robert DeHaan, who was in court every time Ormsby was scheduled to appear. In this case, there is nothing to be happy about, Stokes said. Robert Strout, 64, was sentenced on May 23rd on charges of hindering apprehension and arson for his role in helping Ormsby conceal evidence in the murder investigation. He is serving 4 years in prison, a sentence that resulted from a plea deal with the state. Ormsby's attorneys have already indicated that they will appeal the guilty verdicts in the murders. Stokes said the attorneys now have 21 days to file the appeal. Ormsby found guilty in Amity triple homicide, April 13, 2012. Houlton, Maine jurors. In the trial of the man convicted in the gruesome slayings of two men, and a 10-year-old boy nearly 2 years ago in Amity, will be back Tuesday in Aroostook County Superior Court to determine whether Thayne Ormsby was insane when he wielded the knife that killed the victims. A jury of 7 men and 5 women found him guilty on all counts Friday afternoon. Jurors were not informed of the second phase of the trial until after they had rendered their verdict. Ormsby, 21, was convicted of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of arson in the stabbing deaths of Jeffrey Ryan, 55, Ryan's son Jesse, 10, and Ryan family friend Jason DeHaan, 30, all of Amity, on June 22, 2010. They were found dead about 27 hours after the killings at the Ryans' home on U.S. Route 1, according to police. The defendant did not react when the verdict was read, but did ask corrections officers to remove him from the courtroom just seconds after the jury had left the courtroom. Relatives of the victim said they were not surprised by the verdict. "I expected this," said Melanie Dutra, one of Jeffrey Ryan's daughters and Jesse Ryan's sister. "There was no doubt that he did it. He confessed, plus the police and the Deputy Attorney General did a wonderful job." Dutra attended the trial with her sister Ashley Ryan and brother Shannon Ryan. Ashley Ryan said she was a bit worried when the jury came back into the courtroom before reaching a verdict and asked the judge for clarification on certain issues, but she also felt that Ormsby would be found guilty. The family had listened in court as Ormsby, in a videotape of his confession, said he stabbed Jeffrey Ryan multiple times in the back when the man turned away from him to show Ormsby some nails in a wood shed behind the trailer. Neither woman was surprised that one of Jeffrey Ryan's last acts was to offer to help Ormsby. "That was who he was," said Dutra. "He was always helping people," said Ashley Ryan. "He wouldn't turn away anyone." Deputy Attorney General William Stokes declined Friday to discuss the sentence he might recommend in Ormsby's case. "The trial's not over yet," he said, referring to next week's proceedings, which are scheduled to take up to 2 days. Stokes praised the work of investigators and employees at the Maine State Police Crime Lab. DNA from a beer bottle and cigarette left at the scene was matched to Ormsby's DNA. "The police work in this case was outstanding, and the forensic work done at the crime lab was really impressive," he said at an impromptu press conference on the courthouse steps after the jury had left. Stokes also lauded the work done by Maine State Police Detectives Dale Keegan and Adam Stoudemeyer. They obtained a detailed confession from Ormsby on July 2, 2010, the day he was arrested at the police station in Dover, NH. The prosecutor said the confession appeared to have been very important to the jury. Defense attorneys James M. Dunleavy and Sarah LeClaire of Presque Isle declined to comment on the case until next week, when the second phase of the trial has been completed. Members of Ormsby's family attended the trial Friday, but did not react when the verdict was announced. The defendant's mother, Maria Ormsby, and his uncle Stephen Ormsby, both of Ellsworth, sat behind him for much of the day. They were unable to attend previously because they were listed as possible witnesses. An elderly woman identified by Dunleavy as Ormsby's maternal aunt was in court every day with her husband. Dunleavy declined to identify the couple. Ormsby's mother sat outside the courtroom as the verdict was announced. Ormsby lived with his uncle from the time he was 12 until he was 17, according to testimony. He was removed from his mother's home by the Department of Health and Human Services because of physical abuse. Jurors asked for a readback of the medical examiner's testimony after they had deliberated for nearly 2 hours on Friday. The readback, which took about 1.5 hours, concluded about 2:55 p.m. The verdict was announced about 3:15 p.m. Dr. Marguerite DeWitt testified on Monday, the first day of Ormsby's trial. She no longer works for the state. DeWitt now teaches criminal justice at the University of Texas in Huntsville. All 3 victims died of multiple stab wounds, and from the positions their bodies were found in, each did what little he could to protect himself or escape his attacker, she said. When shown a knife, Monday, that prosecutors had said is the murder weapon, DeWitt said its size and shape were consistent with the wounds inflicted on the victims. Defense attorney Dunleavy admitted into evidence a second large knife found by police in the search of a tan Lincoln automobile owned by Robert Strout. Maine State Police Detective Micah Perkins testified Tuesday that he found the survival-type knife under the front passenger seat. Under questioning by Dunleavy, The detective said there were red-brown stains on the knife. Perkins testified that the knife, which, unlike the alleged murder weapon, had a serrated edge, was sent to the Maine State Crime Lab for testing, but he did not know the results of those tests. The defendant grew up in Ellsworth and went to Ellsworth High School until he dropped out his senior year. At the time of the killings, he was living with Strout, 65, and his wife Joy Strout, 63, in Orient. The fifth day of Ormsby's trial began Friday, with the defense resting its case without calling any witnesses. The state rested its case Thursday afternoon after playing Ormsby's videotaped confession for the jury. Superior Court Justice E. Allen Hunter spent about 25 minutes Friday morning giving instructions to the jury. Lawyers then made their closing arguments. Stokes told jurors that the evidence matched Ormsby's confession. What he told the detectives and what you heard him say is totally consistent with the evidence, Stokes said. The defendant thought he had silenced all the victims, but now, almost 2 years later, the evidence speaks for Jeffrey Ryan, Jesse Ryan, and Jason DeHaan. The prosecutor described the crime as so shocking in its violence and brutality that it almost takes your breath away. Stokes urged the jury to find Ormsby guilty on all 4 charges. Defense attorney LeClaire suggested that Robert Strout, who was expected to testify against Ormsby but did not, might have been responsible for the crime. You may have cause to question Mr. Robert Strout's role in this case, she said. She reminded the jury that 2 knives had been admitted into evidence and that one of them was found in Strout's car. LeClaire asked jurors to take into account what influences and pressure may have been brought to bear on Mayor Ormsby. During his final statement to the jury, Stokes held up the second knife. "They want you to believe this is the knife," he said. "Don't you think if Dr. DeWitt had seen something that was a telltale sign of this serrated edge, she would have mentioned it? It's all a distraction." The trial, which had been scheduled to conclude on April 20th, most likely was shortened by a couple of days when the prosecution decided not to call Robert Strout as a witness. His testimony was expected to take up to 2 days. Stokes declined to comment Thursday on why he did not call Strout as a witness. Strout arrived at the Aroostook County Courthouse in Holton about 12:30 p.m. Thursday and told a court officer that he was at the courthouse for the trial. Strout pleaded guilty in October to hindering apprehension and arson in connection with Ormsby's case. The older man admitted helping Ormsby set fire to Jeffrey Ryan's pickup truck the day after the slayings to cover up evidence and taking Ormsby to New Hampshire to stay with Strout's son, Robert Strout II. He is expected to be sentenced after Ormsby's trial concludes. Next week, the jury will hear evidence as to Ormsby's state of mind at the time of the crime. Jurors then will be asked to determine whether Ormsby was criminally responsible for his actions. If the jury finds he was insane when the crimes were committed, Ormsby would not be sent to prison, but to the Riverview Psychiatric Center in Augusta for an undetermined amount of time. If jurors find him guilty and sane, Ormsby would face a sentence of between 25 years and life in prison on each of the murder charges. He would face up to 30 years in prison if convicted of arson. Judges are allowed to impose life sentences in Maine under specific circumstances. One of them is being convicted of multiple murders. Suspect in Amity slayings arrested in New Hampshire, July 2, 2010. Mitty, Maine, an Orient man wanted in connection with the grisly slaying of 3 people, including a 10-year-old boy, was arrested late Friday evening and charged with 3 counts of murder. Thayne Ormsby, 20, was being held on a fugitive charge in Dover, NH, where he told Maine State Police Detective Dale Keegan that he had stabbed all 3 to death, according to an affidavit written by Maine State Police Detective Josh Haynes. The victims, Jeffrey Ryan, 55, of Amity, his son Jesse Ryan, 10, and the elder Ryan's close friend Jason DeHaan, 30, were found stabbed to death June 23 in a mobile home on U.S. Route 1 in this town of 200 residents in Aroostook County near the Canadian border. According to the affidavit, police tied Ormsby to the crime scene using fingerprint and DNA evidence. A key witness also told police he saw Ormsby covered in blood around the time of the slayings. Robert Strout, 63, of Orient, told police that Ormsby told him that he knifed Jeff in the woodshed because he believed Ryan was dealing drugs. Ormsby had been staying at Strout's residence. Strout is the father of Tamara Strout, who has a 16-year-old daughter with Jeffrey Ryan. Ormsby is a son of Maria Ormsby, who is a longtime friend of Tamara Strout. Ormsby also told Strout that after he killed Ryan, he went back into the residence and saw DeHaan and Jesse Ryan sitting on the couch. Ormsby told Strout that DeHaan ran outside with Ormsby chasing him. He punched DeHaan, according to the affidavit, stabbed him with the knife, and punched him before he knifed him again, then drug his body to the brook. The 20-year-old then went back inside where young Jesse Ryan was running around and stabbed him in the back bedroom of the mobile home, according to the affidavit. Ormsby gave no motive for killing Jesse Ryan or DeHaan. A criminal background check on Jeffrey Ryan revealed no history of drug-related offenses. Strout at first told police that he had gone to Sanford by himself on June 25th, 2 days after the deaths, and returned the next day. During a simultaneous interview with Tanya Strout, one of Strout's daughters, Detective Keegan, learned that Thayne Ormsby had been staying at Robert Strout's residence for several weeks. Strout later said that he actually had taken Ormsby to stay with Robert Strout II, presumably the elder Strout's son, in Dover, NH. According to the affidavit, the victims were found the evening of June 23rd after Robert DeHaan, Jason DeHaan's father, arrived at the mobile home to look for his son. He entered the residence and found Jesse Ryan's body. Robert DeHaan told police that Jeffrey Ryan's 1989 Ford F-150 truck was missing from the scene, and he couldn't find Jason DeHaan. During a subsequent search of the property, investigators found Jeffrey Ryan dead in a small shed next to the residence and found DeHaan dead at the end of the driveway. Police believe the slayings occurred in the early morning hours. Police collected evidence from the scene, including cigarette butts and beer bottles, and submitted it for forensic DNA testing. Haynes said in the affidavit that testing revealed a full DNA profile of an unknown male on a beer bottle and cigarette butt that were found at the Ryan home. Ormsby was interviewed by Keegan and Detective Adam Stoutemire in Dover, NH on June 29th. Ormsby told detectives he came to Orient to stay at the Strout residence just after Memorial Day and left when Robert Strout drove him to New Hampshire. Ormsby told detectives that he planned to move up to Tamara Strout's residence in Weston, fix it up and live there with Strout and Ryan's daughter, Maria Ryan. Ormsby told detectives he met Jeffrey Ryan once and that the only time he ever went to Jeffrey Ryan's house was 2 to 3 weeks before the slayings. He said that while he was there, he drank a bottle of beer and left the bottle on the kitchen sink. Ormsby told detectives he had never met Jason DeHaan or Jesse Ryan. He voluntarily gave detectives his DNA and fingerprints. During the interview, Ormsby also reportedly told police that he smokes. The next day, the State Police Crime Lab informed detectives that Ormsby's fingerprints matched a latent print from a beer bottle that was collected from the kitchen counter in Jeffrey Ryan's residence. The next day, the lab determined that Ormsby's DNA matched the unknown male profile collected from that bottle and from a cigarette butt in the ashtray on the kitchen table. The burned remains of a pickup truck that had been sought in connection with the case was found last Saturday in Weston, about 15 miles from the Ryan home. According to the affidavit, a witness told investigators that he and his girlfriend were traveling on Bancroft Road in Weston and saw a maroon four-wheel drive Dodge extended cab pickup stopped at the entrance to the field road leading into where Jeffrey Ryan's burned truck later would be discovered. The witness said he saw a male get out of the truck and head into the woods, reportedly carrying a container out in front of him with 2 hands. It appeared the top of the container had been cut off, and the male was walking, as if he was trying not to spill the contents of the container. The witness said that it looked like a truck owned by Robert Strout. The witness said he saw the truck head toward Danforth, leaving the male behind as he walked up the field road toward where the Ryan truck was located on Saturday. On June 27th, Detective Darren Crane went to Strout's residence in Orient and saw footwear impressions in the dirt path leading to the residence doorway. Crane said that he previously had observed similar footwear impressions next to Ryan's burned truck. On Friday, Detectives Crane and Haynes returned to Robert Strout's residence. He then told police that on Tuesday or Wednesday, June 22 or 23, he was sitting on his porch when Ormsby came through the woods with his bike and went out behind the Strout residence. Strout then saw that Ormsby's shirt, pants, and shoes were covered in blood. According to the affidavit, Ormsby told Strout that he killed Jeffrey Ryan and then said he killed them all. Strout said the 20-year-old threatened him, telling him that if he didn't help him, he would kill Strout's family. Ormsby denied threatening Robert Strout or any member of the Strout family, according to the affidavit. Ormsby also reportedly told Strout that he took Jeffrey Ryan's truck and that he had to get rid of it. Strout followed Ormsby in Jeffrey Ryan's truck to Tamara Strout's Springer Road residence. Police believe that Ormsby parked Ryan's truck behind Tamara Strout's residence and went into her home, still wearing the blood-soaked clothing. Robert Strout told police he left Ormsby there and returned to his Orient residence. Robert said he later returned to the Springer Road residence and saw Ormsby leave the home wearing nothing but his underwear. Ormsby reportedly burned the bloody clothing in the furnace of Tamara Strout's home. Strout, driving his own vehicle, followed Ormsby and Ryan's vehicle to the field road on Bancroft Road where Ryan's burnout truck eventually was found. Ormsby burned the truck according to the affidavit and came running back and told Strout it's done. Ormsby then told Strout that he had to dispose of the knife, so Strout drove the 20-year-old to a bog on U.S. Route 1 and Ormsby threw the knife into the water. Members of the state police dive team were searching the bog Friday evening. Ormsby's arrest came as state police and Maine drug enforcement agents were nearly 6 hours into the apparent execution of a search warrant at the home of Robert Strout and his wife Joy. State police detectives, MDEA agents, and members of the State Police Criminal Investigations Divisions and Evidence Response Teams were among those at the 2948 U.S. Route 1 residence. Joy Strout talked to the Bangor Daily News last Thursday, just one day after the triple homicides. Sitting at her kitchen table, she spoke of how her daughter had a child with Jeffrey Ryan. Ormsby also was at the table smoking cigarettes as he listened to Strout answer questions. Jake DeHaan, 27 of Amity, who is the brother of Jason DeHaan, was flabbergasted at news of Ormsby's arrest. Looking at a picture of Ormsby on a newspaper website, DeHaan declared, "I have never seen that kid before. He's an out-of-towner, obviously," DeHaan said, adding that he had already heard that Tamara Strout had brought Ormsby into town a month ago. It could not have been just him to commit the homicides. DeHaan said of Ormsby, "There's no way he could have overpowered my brother." A Facebook profile belonging to Thayne Ormsby listed Ellsworth as his hometown. Many of his friends were from Ellsworth High School. Tamara Strout and Mariah Ryan also were listed as friends. His quote was, "I have but two passions, love and war." BDN writer Nick Sambides Jr. contributed to this report. In the end, Thayne Ormsby didn't cry. He didn't beg. He stood in court as the judge handed down 3 life sentences, one for each life he took, and simply said, "I understand." No emotion, no apology, just silence. To this day, he claims he believed he was doing the right thing, that his victims were dangerous, that he was protecting others. But the truth is far darker. There were no drugs, no danger, no conspiracy, only the delusion of one young man who mistook hate for justice. Behind the bars of Maine State Prison, Ormsby now lives the rest of his life in solitude, no chance of parole, no future, no freedom. He's become a ghost inside his own story, the boy who wanted to be a hero and became a killer instead. So ask yourself this: how many lives have been destroyed because of rumors, fear, and lies we choose to believe? Sometimes evil doesn't come from monsters in the dark. It comes from the mind that thinks it's saving the world. If stories like this haunt you, subscribe, share, and stay tuned. The next one is even darker.